There's a massive housing backlog, a persistent and significant shortage of adequate housing for people, particularly for low-income citizens, despite decades of government intervention, because it's riddled in corruption. Informal settlements proliferate. These shanty towns go on for kilometers and kilometers. The uncontrolled growth of informal settlements, shanty towns, due to rapid urbanization and lack of formal housing options for people. And this cannot be allowed to continue in South Africa because this creates a fragmented and disorganized society. And a fragmented, disorganized society is not one that produces the best people and the best growth. Land invasion and property rights are not respected. The pervasive issue of illegal land invasion undermines legal property rights and creates insecure tenure. And I'm not talking here about the full story of illegal farm takeovers and genocide. That's a lie. Crime does happen on farms, but people aren't doing that to take over farms. I'm talking here about the EFF-driven land invasion types, and ones driven by government officials, mind you. The state is ineffective at delivering houses, they're inefficient, they're slow to do it, and the quality of government-provided houses is low quality. The black South African government of the ANC provides far lower quality houses than the apartheid government ever did. The apartheid government houses are still standing and are still solid. The RDP houses that were built 8, 10, 15 years ago are crumbling. Add to that the urban decay of the inner city. There's a deterioration of the central business districts. Have you been to the Durban city centre recently? And older residential areas are often neglected and overcrowded, usually with foreigners who are living there illegally. Don't even get me started on old mining communities and old mining houses that are now being rented out by unnamed persons to illegal persons. There's an infrastructure deficit, insufficient provision of basic services, water, sanitation, electricity, roads in both formal and informal settlements. A squatter camp is informal to the highest degree. It is so badly organized that services are difficult to deliver and policing is even difficult to do. There is here a spatial inequality brought on by the legacy of apartheid, the impact of the apartheid era spatial planning, with many disadvantaged communities located far from economic opportunities. That's one of the challenges of the housing as well. But that's a challenge for the ANC to fix. They can't blame the apartheid government for that any longer because the apartheid government planned it exactly that way for their own reasons. They wanted it like that. They wanted to disadvantage black people, colored people, Indian people, and so on. But as the ANC, you haven't done enough to fix that. Whose fault is that? You expect the apartheid government to come back and fix that? They hate those people. That's why they put them there. And you who came in saying that you were there to fix the problems of the past have done nothing but feed your fat stomachs. There's a lack of private sector involvement around property ownership. There's an over-reliance on state-led housing initiatives with insufficient encouragement of private sector participation because of those policies. If a bank starts issuing a specialized sort of home loan or building fund for people to build or buy their own low-cost homes, what if the government decides to take that land and redistribute it to themselves next week? Now the bank has lost out, the individual has lost out, or they've created some sort of trust, handed it to one of their cronies or one of the royal families in a trust. Now the whole township is in a trust for the next 999 years, and all the rents are paid to the trust instead of home loans being paid back to the bank that set up this funding mechanism. That's what happens when you don't have a conservative government. Corruption in housing programs is rife. Allegations of instances of corruption within housing allocation and construction projects deters resources from being put in. Some people have been waiting for houses since 1996. There is large migration to urban centers with rapid rural to urban migration, often without adequate planning or infrastructure to support that influx. So informal settlements start to spring up all over the place like jumping castles. There's poor maintenance of public housing, it deteriorates, and a lack of proper upkeep in existing state-owned or subsidized housing units. South Africa has an absence of a functional land market, making land acquisition for development complex and expensive because of the policies around it. The standard of building practices has become poorer, especially from the government side, with the public sector still keeping a very high standard, but the government brings down everyone because they build so many. There's a lack of a property ownership culture because you can't sell your RDP house, you can't borrow against it because you don't really own it. It is technically state-owned still. This gives people a weak emphasis on private property ownership and the responsibility that comes with that. Someone who owns a shack in a land that's been invaded and taken over by people, in a sense, has more ownership of that place than an RDP house owner does. Safety and security in settlements is very low because there's high crimes and insecurity within many low-income and informal settlements. They breed a dysfunctional community and society of people who commit violent crimes. Informal settlements in South Africa often lead to environmental damage due to a lack of sanitation, waste management, and encroachment on sensitive areas. There's so many bureaucratic hurdles for developers as well, with excessive regulations, permits, and administrative delays and corruption discouraging private developers, especially at the lower end. Insufficient land audits and releases slow down and make the whole process of building ineffective, and the release and identification of suitable state-owned land for development slow and inefficient. There's a lack of community involvement in planning because of the top-down planning approaches that come from a centralized government that hates its own people and does not unlock the potential of communities themselves to do for themselves. And the communities themselves are also at fault because they're always waiting for the government to do something instead of doing it themselves. Because South Africa has developed into a dependency mentality, a perception that citizens expect the state to provide all housing solutions rather than seeking private or communal alternatives. Subscribe to the channel. If you don't, I know you're the one that burnt down Parliament. Become a member of the channel and get exclusive members-only content, courses, articles, audio, and much more, all in one place. We add new materials every single month and we'd love to have you. Check out the links in the description or in the links for the channel.